Welcome to another episode of the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, and today I have Ashley Pendergraft with me, and she is a founder at Airtable and Zapier consultant that primarily works with feminist and neurodivergent online business owners and help them use, guess what, everyone? Yes, you guessed it, Airtable. Airtable to manage group programs, membership, masterminds, really any group. And she does it so that they can deliver a low lift, high touch customer experience. All right. And she does that through her signature program called Systems Over Stress. Ashley, I believe, hold on, let me think. I should have thought. Okay, no, this is real. You're the first, you are the first Airtable evangelist and expert that I've had on the podcast. And I am really excited with talking about how to centralize your back end with Airtable.
Mhm.
So welcome to the podcast, Ashley. Give us a little insight of your background, how you got started, and your humble beginnings.
Sure. So thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, my humble beginnings. I've always been a systems and operations minded person. I used to be an event producer and we would run a lot of stuff out of Google Sheets. I'm sure we all know how tough it is to be in Google Sheets. Doing run of shows in one tab and making like forcing the calendar like in another one, and they would always be like out of sync. So we were talking kind of in the green room that we always made things work for us, but we were never like fully satisfied. And so I'm really proud of my, humble, I was a tour manager for a rock band. Like I've been in ops in like very high, like intense situations. Um, and it was always in spreadsheets. And so I got into the online education world. I was working as an ops manager for an uh, an online education expert, as her
Mm,
ops person, and was using a lot of spreadsheets. And this was in like 2015, 2016, and Airtable was kind of first like popping off a little bit.
yeah.
And when we found it, I was like, what is this? This is what I've been looking for. I moved like everything into it.
Mm,
And just it was my favorite software to play with. And when I went off on my own, actually in February of 2020, I quit that role to run in-person events. That was going to be my thing, running across the country, doing these in-person groups. And of course, the pandemic hit in now 2 weeks later. So that wasn't the best timing for me,
yeah.
but I had this ops experience. I knew the online marketing world, online education world. So my first little humble course launched in April 2020 called Be Your Own COO, and I taught Airtable in it. And so I had a little bit of Airtable stuff, but there was like inbox management. When we first start, we don't know exactly what we want to teach and all of those things. So it was pretty scrappy. And then kind of towards the end of that year, I just was nerding out more and more with Airtable. And everyone was like, nobody cares about the software. Don't be the Airtable girl. They just care about the solution.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, 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 no. Maybe, but I'm going to try to do an Airtable 101 workshop because I love this thing so much. They didn't sponsor me. I was like, let's just try it. And with like my highest attended webinar. And from then onward, like I have been the Airtable girl. Like anyone has an Airtable question, they slide into my DMs, and it's just been such a blast. I think Airtable can organize and centralize, every piece of your life and business in it. But I found the most helpful thing it does is organize and automate and centralize data for group programs, masterminds, and memberships. So that's where I focus now.
I love it. I love it. And I can't say I share the same Google Sheets experience. As a marketer, there's no way that you can't use Google Sheets. I just didn't use them as thoroughly, right?
Mhm.
And when I found Airtable, it was hard for me to wrap my head around what it does, right? Like I was so used to if I were first off, I wasn't used to database software. The only
Yeah.
database software I've ever used prior to Airtable was Microsoft Access. Okay. And I didn't set that up. It was like a very static UI that I would type into and it would spit out CD covers. That was the extent
Mhm.
of any database. So when I got Airtable, I was likening it to Google Sheets. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
it's like a colorful, I'm laughing at myself now. And I was like, oh, it's like a colorful Google Sheets. This is cool. Maybe it has some promise. And I just can't remember how I found out about it. I think I was in like a Facebook group and someone was like, what are the tools that you can't live without? And like 4 or 5 people were like, Airtable, Airtable. I was like, what is this? So I've of course started to use it probably in all the wrong ways. And I did stumble upon this amazing use case from my program, and it has just been so instrumental on the back end to managing all of the moving parts and storing all of the data to make me be prepared, help me show up, and be ready for all of my group members. So with that being said, we share that same experience in terms of its use for group programs. However, I am an Airtable enthusiast, evangelist, all of that stuff, right? But I can't tell you how many people ask me, "What is Airtable?" They hear the podcast, they want to get started with it, and they're kind of struggling with like, "What's the first thing that I do? What is this? How does it differ from Smart Sheets and Smart Suite and other sheets and Google Sheets and bed sheets,
Mhm.
whatever sheet you have?" And it's for me. What I found is someone like you could explain it much better than me. I can use it better than I can explain it.
Yeah.
Right? So this is where I kinda wanna start our conversation is in your own words, for the person that is intrigued by this software. Because, by the way, listeners, yes, we are going to get into some of the back end group management and some keys to how you centralize it, but let's start at the top, Ashley. How would you define what Airtable is in your words, in layman terms, to someone who just found out about it and is intrigued with its potential?
Yes. It's still hard for me, so I will try, but I think so many people ask, like, "Is it like spreadsheets or is it like Google Sheets?" Because Google Sheets, like, we've been forcing it to be a database for years, and it's the closest thing we've got, and Airtable really is a database system at its core, so it's kind of figuring out how to explain what a database is, and the best way I describe it is having Airtable helps you have one central source of truth for your data. We use your group program, for example. So many of us use Google Forms. Those forms have your onboarding and maybe your monthly check ins, but all those pieces about your student and their progress live in silos deep in your Google Drive that you'll never know. You'll never be able to connect. You'll never be able to see patterns.
Yeah.
With a database, you pull that all together in one central location so you can see one place where Ashley's email is and one place where her onboarding form is and when she filled it out and how many Q&A calls she submitted. When you pull all that together, you're able to, do things with that data. A lot of us understand data or maybe excited, maybe intimidated by it, but they you can't look at it, you can't analyze it if it's just in these silos, which is what happens in Google Sheets. So that's what Airtable helps with, bringing those things together in a centralized location so you can look at that data, automate things based out of it, make reports, make beautiful interfaces, all of that. So that's my simplest way I can describe it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna add into some of this, okay? What I found is that the Airtable is great for assessing the data, and Google Sheets is more for like analytics and all that. In the beginning, for the beginner, because as you know, Ashley, there are some ways that you can kind of create like I don't know if you call them joint tables, but tables that link to a lot of records that then allow
Mhm.
you to do some roll up calculations. See, I've got technical already. Sorry everyone. I'm trying to ease my way into the difficulty, but I'm just saying the things that I thought that only Google Sheets could do in terms of analytics and charts. Airtable really has
Yeah.
grown with interfaces and all of that that allows to do that too. But what I how I viewed it is spreadsheets first off, they're not databases. And I recorded
Right.
a podcast about project management software, and I was just talking about how project management software is not a database software. CRMs are database software, Airtable is database software. This is a new age where database software has become tangible to the small business owner. So everybody's new to this. Ashley, everybody's like, what's the difference? Why this and why that? But one of the things that I found is it's easy to store data into. It's easy to look at that data in a variety of ways to see trends,
Mhm.
to identify perhaps some patterns that you can then take action on. And it's meant for data to get in, data to be easily looked at while the data is in there, and Airtable makes it easy for data to get out. So
Yes.
for me, it Ashley, I believe, I'm ready to make this statement. I believe I use Airtable daily more than any other tool. Any other tool.
I'm that makes me happy. I will also say I have not used a single spreadsheet in my business for the last year and a half. I spreadsheets in my world is like a dirty word. Um,
You've been scarred.
because they analyze and, if you wanna keep your spreadsheets, that's totally fine, but I have found a lot of the spreadsheets that my clients use, I look at them, I'm like, "This could be better in a
Yes.
database," especially with the ways that Airtable has improved with their interfaces and the ways you can analyze. My kind of framework of looking at these Airtable bases is you have to centralize before you can optimize, and then you analyze. So centralize,
Mm.
optimize, analyze. So many people wanna know how many people are, going through my program, like, what's the progress? And you can't analyze that data if it's not centralized in one place. And so you have to pull all that data in. So that's the first step is getting all of those disparate spreadsheets pulled into one central place. So then you can play with optimization of automations and some fun things like that and the analyzing that you can do as well.
All right, great segue. Let's talk about centralizing. Okay. Because for me, I so Airtable is so instrumental in my business that if a tool doesn't easily integrate with them, that could be a consideration of me not using the tool, right? And the
Oh
flip
yeah, it's
side,
dead in the water. We don't no, no, no. You don't do it.
right? Yeah, I'm
If
like,
it's
I'm
not Zapier
sorry.
compatible or Airtable, we're gone. Yeah.
We Ashley, what do you want me to say? You're making things too difficult. So one of the form software that I use frequently is Jotform, and I think they were one
Mhm.
of the first companies that had a true Airtable integration that was super easy. And the first step for me in terms of centralizing was just hooking up every form in Jotform to Airtable. So when it comes to centralizing your framework, how would you recommend someone get started in centralizing their data in Airtable?
It's a great question. So I like for people, one, if you have a group program,
Mhm.
you want to at least onboard like your students when they join, centralizing when they join, getting them
Yeah.
onboarded, and then any piece of the puzzle about their experience because there's so many moving parts to a group program, but so many other aspects of our business. You have your circle community and the post over there. You have the Q&A calls, their lesson completion, and so there's so much rich data. When you pull it, use Zapier, use some of those automation tools to centralize it. That's really I like to look at it we have a big rule in my program, Systems Over Stress. You work on one workflow at a time to eliminate systems over stress for a reason. Like, we wanna focus
Mm.
on one thing at a time. So, what is that thing that you're working on in your business? Are you trying to start a podcast? Awesome. We're create a central podcast hosting base that has, the episodes, your guest form, all of those things. So it depends on what your biggest definitely don't try to get everything in Airtable tomorrow. That's like a recipe for overwhelm. But
Yeah.
what's that next project? What anytime I always tell my clients, if you're about to open a spreadsheet, like a new spreadsheet, stop what you're doing and make it an Airtable instead. So I like
Mm.
to really focus on just what's your next priority and start to think about how it can be done in Airtable instead.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something because I was going to say this when you were mentioning spreadsheets. When you look at a spreadsheet and you're like, this could be so much better with Airtable. There are times where, so I work with a lot of tech startups, and all of them are using Google Sheets and Notion. Guaranteed, guaranteed. Ash, Google
Me and
Sheets.
Notion, we've got some words.
This
I
is
was I was a hard no on Notion because they didn't have API integration for a long time,
oh,
so
it
it
was
was like
so
an it
painful.
wasn't it was non-negotiable, but now they do have it, and I'm like, "But I don't even I'm not gonna look at it." I'm like, "There are people that love Notion. I'll wait until they're ready to come to me for
Yeah,
Airtable," is kinda
yeah.
my I
Yeah,
say for 'em.
their API is it's workable. It's nowhere near,
Mhm.
where it needs to be, but they're often in Notion and Google Sheets, and there's always a sheet that I get that's either like a content calendar, a CRM, like everything that literally screams use Airtable. And one of the telltale signs I want to help you all is some of you are using filters in Google Sheets and pivot tables. This is like done so much easier in Airtable with grouping fields, and you can the speed in which you can access and visualize your data differently in Airtable versus a spreadsheet. I just had to mention that because it's one of the
Yeah.
telltale signs I see is if you've got this big spreadsheet and you've got drop downs and all these filters, I'm like, you know what? There's a much
When my
better way to
clients
do
are
this.
proud of their color-coded spreadsheets, I'm like, "It's pretty. Okay." But, like, it's and the thing I wanna stress is that you can have a successful program run out of Google Spreadsheets, but, like, why would you wanna do that? I was listening to, before I hopped on, a podcast where you were saying, "Yeah, you could store your contacts in your notes app, but, like, there's so why wouldn't you just use your contacts app?" And
Yes.
I was just a very prolific, amazing, course creator, just made an Instagram post, and I got it. You're like a thought leader when people are sending other people's content and they're like, "This is embarrassing." But
Yeah.
she she's like, "We're so proud. We've made our clients $43 million in the course of our program. Every month, my team tracks our clients' progress in an Excel spreadsheet, and we update that." And I was like, "Oh my god." Like, yes, you have incredible client results, but that's so much harder on your team than it needs to be. You can't play with interfaces, you can't break that down. It's like, I'm dying to see the back end of that spreadsheet
Yeah.
because it's possible, but there's another way, there's an easier way, and that's one of the biggest, troubles I have is people who are like, "My program is thriving, it's $1 million program, and there's just too much data to bring over," or, "This is working for us now," and that's a fun, like, sticky spot for me to try to, like, push people along and help people see the light of having things in Airtable.
Yeah. So I want to expound on the use case we're talking about and the potential tech stack. It sounds like a lot of your program students and a lot of your teaching revolves around a group program. So you have some level of teaching that encompasses maybe weekly, monthly, biweekly calls, right? Some component, some
Mhm.
live component. There's some curriculum, and then there's some community, right? So you
Yeah.
have things taking place in the curriculum, progress there. You have calls. So there's people showing up, asking questions, however your calls are structured. And then you have community for in between time, just collaborating, engaging, sharing. And there's information taking place in all three areas. Now, you talked about how you need to centralize it, and I'm thinking that you're looking at your community software and making sure that there's actions that can be sent over to Airtable in that software. Then your curriculum is sending actions over into Airtable, and then potentially your call environment is sending
Mhm.
data into Airtable. So I have all of this data in Airtable, Ashley, but one came from over here, my circle community, the other came from the curriculum. How do I create a cohesive experience? I did what you said.
Mhm.
I got it all in Airtable, but now I have tabs and maybe I have multiple Airtables. What does that person do to make their lives easier and start to connect all of this data to,
Yep.
one member or whatnot?
So this is the biggest rookie mistake that I see with new Airtable users is they're like, I did it. I have all my data inside of Airtable. And I look at it and they're missing one key table, which is the primary client record table. So what that
Mhm.
is imagine you have a wheel and you have all of these like spokes, but you don't have like the central hub, that middle part that connects it all together. And so that's the part that you absolutely need, and that makes it all fall into place. So it's literally just a table, your primary student record table. It had like their name, like the stuff that is gonna be the same no matter what. So first name, last name, email, maybe
Okay.
start date, end date. Then in Airtable, one of the biggest reasons databases are better than spreadsheets is this linked record capability. So you can link the Q&A call to the primary student record. You can link the circle comments that they've done to the primary student record. That's the piece that so many people are missing, and when they start to unlock that, they're like, "Oh," because something that I love to see is when people start to see the potential, they're like, "My student hasn't filled out their onboarding form in 7 days. Can I send them an automated email checking in on them?" I'm like,
Mhm.
"Yes," because you'd see that they joined 7 days ago and their onboarding form is not linked yet, it's empty, so, like, you can automate that, so you can start to play with possibility based on a lot of these different data points. Let's say someone hasn't engaged in Circle, hasn't submitted an onboarding form, and hasn't opened the program, like, they've ghosted on all 3 accounts. You wouldn't know that
Mhm.
if just the data was in silos, so you can create tailored emails, for those type of circumstances.
Yeah, we've gotta eliminate the silos, and I love what you're saying because here's the thing. I tell people all the time, the data is there. The question is, can you access it? Can you
Mhm.
see it? And can you see it in a way that makes action taking easy?
Yes.
That's the
I'm
power
so
of Airtable.
Yes, and I'm very proud that you ask me any question about my program, I could pull it up for you in a couple minutes, it would if not seconds, and that's so powerful. And so many times a CEO asks their ops team, "Hey, like, how many failed payments have we got?" And what's the status of X? And they're like, "Okay, let me go into Sidecar and let me go check Kajabi." Like, they have to do this digging and they make this report that is out of date the moment it's done. And that's the part that feels like such a waste of energy.
Mhm.
I would much rather be able to, set up these preset views that so any question I have about the program, all that data is in there just ready for me to look at and make decisions accordingly.
Yeah, I wanna talk about views because views are like they they're so powerful, but they were kind of sleeper for me for a long time.
Mhm,
So let me say this. I'm a minimalist in every capacity. I'm always asking, do I need it? And if so,
mhm.
can I use less of it, XYZ? So I found myself doing that in the beginning with Airtable. Oh, I'm trying to save my views, Ashley. As if I'm being charged per view. And I can't
There are
remember.
sections now, so you're a little more organized.
Oh,
You
I
can
love
collapse
sections.
sections of views, which
Yes.
that's new.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
So
goodness.
I get it.
So what happened was this. I can't remember who, but I saw somebody's Airtable database and they had a scrollable sidebar of views. They had at least 30 views in there. And it wasn't slowing down. Airtable, the app wasn't slowing down. It was still very functional. And I was like, oh, I'm tripping over like 3 or 5 views. This person has like 30. And they weren't just views
Yeah.
to have views. But what it did was it gave me permission to do more views. And once I started to realize that a view is, instead of me changing my grouping criteria or my filter on one view, just create another view. And then with one click of a button, you can see that same data just displayed differently. And for as simple as that sounds, Ashley, that opened up a world of possibilities for me.
Well, so many people are used to, and anytime I see this in a spread in a Airtable, I call it spreadsheet mentality, where they'll create a different table for January 2023 and February 2023, because that's what you're used to. When you really, it's all the same data, so you want to filter it down. And that's a really subtle thing that you have to switch from spreadsheet to database. But once you
Yeah.
understand that, you're like, I'm going to make views for everything. So I see that a lot.
That's a really great call out, and I didn't realize that's probably exactly where I got the views from. Because if I look back at my old Airtable usage, I probably was creating
Hmm.
tables, just like you would a different tab into Google Sheets. But one of the things that I use views for, so everybody, if you're not familiar with Airtable, a view is just a way to visualize your data differently. Same data set differently. You can create multiple views in like grid form, Kanban, if for all of my Trello enthusiasts out there, calendar views and everything. But one of the things that I learned, Ashley, was that you can, well, I guess Airtable added automations. But now what I like to do a lot is when a record enters a view, I can
Hmm.
trigger automation and have other things take place, which again, you go from something simple as, oh, I'm just visualizing my data differently, and then say, okay, if it's in this view because it meets this particular criteria, I want it to do something, right? And for me, oh, hold on, what you got me going actually. And for me, one of the easiest things to do with subject matter experts who probably would have a group coaching program was
Yeah.
they were getting these intake forms. And based on certain criteria or based on a way that they answered, I had a view that said qualified lead. And it
Mhm.
was only if they answered, the questions
Yeah.
a certain way. And when something entered that view, it just sent off an email or a notification to the founder, hey, you've got a nice qualified lead. Make sure you follow up. And they were like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. How did you do it? But this is seems so simple, Ashley, right? But this is some of the simple power,
Yeah.
to Airtable.
I think that's as systems experts, I'm always thinking like, what else can it do? What else can it do? I forget that just an Airtable form is going to change someone's like life. And
Yes.
so it's that balance of like pushing the limits with these automations to be like, yeah, you contain grid view into Kanban view. Pretty cool, huh? And they're like, oh my God, this is everything. And so yeah, it's balancing those things. But something else that I love with the views is
Mhm.
you can do automations when it enters a view. Something you can also do, let's say you have applications, instead of creating a custom ClickUp task for every application to review, sometimes I like my clients to just have like a recurring task that's like check application. And it's just a link to that view that just shows where applications are in need of review. And so that way you don't have to you there's kind of that consistency of being able to check it. And if nothing's in the view that day, you're good to go and you can just mark it complete. So there's so many interesting ways you can use views to stay organized, to automate and all those things.
Yeah, I love it. So just to get everybody ready, you're gonna want to stay to the end because Ashley and I are gonna play I use Airtable for, and we're just gonna go back and forth and see what comes up. But before we go there, I really want to talk a little bit more about the group program structure. Uh, Ashley, I feel like group coaching, group cohort based learning, however you want to define it, has really taken an uptick lately, right? People are more prone to move in the herd, in the crowd, and rightfully so because you can then harness the mastermind, the collective mind, and solve problems and create a camaraderie and collaboration and all of those things. Now, we're talking about using Airtable to really centralize everything so that you can optimize and automate and take action. What would you say for somebody who's like, okay, I get it. I've got a group program. I'm listening to you guys. Okay, I can conceptualize it. What would you say are the main benefits for specifically people who run group programs of centralizing that data? You mentioned easy access, right, to everything. But what else should they be aware of that they can unlock with doing such a thing?
Yes. So I believe any group program who is not utilizing Airtable is going to fall behind and
Mm,
is their client experience is not going to be able to keep up with the people who are using Airtable. So, with that being said, I love to use my client Gina as an example. She has a group program called Six Figure Saver. Her goal is for her clients to save 100K. She has an Airtable form where they submit their wins. She uses that data for marketing like crazy. Every week she updates total client wins down to the cent, what's
mm,
happening. She's able to group that by type of profession or like what's the average amount that people are saving through the program. So she's able to use that not only for client experience, which I'll get to in a second, but like incredible marketing with like incredibly accurate results and social proof in a way that
mm,
you cannot do if you are trying to generate reports and pull things out of uh, your different spreadsheets and your different tech. So that's a big thing is that if you want to market, like we all have to market, we all want to see who's our best students. You can see that
yeah.
easily. You can ping them for case studies, so that's huge. But then there's just so much once you have that data. Once her student hits 100K, automatically they get an email from Airtable saying, "Hey, you're now in our six-figure saver club. You did it." How would you know that? How would you know that in a spreadsheet? And
Mm,
those little things, really, I've gotten people joining my program because they see how dialed in and how high touch these programs are,
mm,
uh, because of Airtable, and they're like, "How is this so good? How am I getting an email saying these are the amount of amount of money I've submitted? Like, how are you doing that?" And they're always like, "Go to Ashley. Like, I can't teach you that." So that's huge. So I think it really up levels your marketing and it enhances your client experience so much that it is going to be the standard. It already is the standard, but it's really going to just continue to snowball from here.
yeah, I'll say this. One of the keys with the group coaching program that I found to be very effective as a marketer is that you're always collecting information and you're always asking for
Mhm.
information. So in a lot of my programs, once you hit a certain milestone, complete a lesson, complete a course, there's always a form or an opportunity for me to collect information, right? Now, you don't get 100% participation, but you stay consistent over time. You'll check that Airtable database and you've got quite the repository of feedback, right?
Mhm.
So now, instead of going to the market saying, "Hey, fill out this survey. What would you guys like us to do next?" Which I'm totally not opposed to, by the way. I love doing that. But some of those questions have already been answered if you've been collecting and centralizing the data. Part two of this is you mentioned somebody didn't fill out their intake form. They hadn't engaged in Circle, the community software. They haven't attended the call. You can also flip it. What I've learned is that I can start once you put enough data in there, once you get enough data in there, you can start to really validate your customer persona and understand like,
Mhm.
oh, wait a minute, this person did this within 2 days, this person did that. This is a keeper, right? Like you can start to predict whether or not you're going to lose them before they even show that you'll lose them. And you can start seeing who those people are that are really going to go and stay with your company. So Ashley, I'm familiar with data. I'm not overwhelmed by it. I can go into Airtable. I can build an interface. We won't get into interfaces here because it's just too much for one podcast. What are some ways that people can analyze data with Airtable?
Huh. Literally any way you want. Um, honestly, any way you want if it's all
Yeah.
centralized. Some specific ones, we haven't even got into. So we have a sales hub. So I recommend all of my clients automate all of their sales into an Airtable base called Sales Hub. You have the sales in one table and you have the products in another. You can start to see how much each product has made you. And if you move off of Thrivecart and you move to another platform, you lose that really crucial information. One of my favorite things when people set up their sales hub is like, oh my God, that little thing that I made like $20,000 last year. And this thing I put
Yes.
so much time into has not made anything. And they just don't know that information until they
Mhm,
see the numbers. And
mhm.
so that's a big one, but it really
It's
is like
huge.
any question you got is able to be answered.
That is so huge, Ashley. You said that, and I remember this. I'm laughing at myself because I set up a sales dashboard, probably a mini version of what you do, and I forgot about it. I totally forgot about it, but it was automated, synced up, and all of that. And then one day I was sitting down, I was like, "Oh, how am I doing?" I just had the question, and I went through my regular path. I go into Thrivecart, I go into all these other platforms, and it got overwhelming. And I said, "Wait a minute, I think I did this
And that's
before."
mental math to add up all those different. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, and now I got sticky notes in my I'm using my phone as a calculator, like, this is overwhelming, and I go to my Airtable database, and I connected it with an interface, and to your point, I could start to see sales per product, per month, per quarter,
Mhm.
and per year. Ashley, looking at that, I was about to create an entire new product offering, just off a gut feeling that, "Hey, I think something's broke. I think I need to do something." Just a gut feeling. Look, Airtable made the data so easy to see and access quickly that I was able to say, wait a minute, I don't need something new. I need to just keep promoting this thing. I may need a new angle to this existing thing because this has been a
Yes.
workhorse for me. You know,
And you didn't even realize.
I, I
And
didn't
that's
even realize.
I wanna touch on you said I still believe in gut feeling, and I also believe in having data. And sometimes
Yes.
they conflict. In 2021, I had VIP days, and those were like 5K each. They run like 75K of revenue that year, which for me was a lot. And
Mm,
at the end of the year, I was like, "Mm, I don't really wanna do these anymore." And I
mm,
looked at it, I was like, "This one is 75% of my revenue." And so I see the data, and I'm choosing with my own gut to go all in on systems over stress, my group program. And that was a scary decision. I knew the data and I went for it anyways. And last year, I made I had a feeling. I was like, "I wonder how I'm doing with systems over stress compared to VIP days last year." Like, I wonder, and I looked it up and I had made like 95,000 off
mm,
of systems over stress
mm.
and like 6 off of VIP days. And it was really cool to see that flip. So even the data told me, keep going with VIP days, keep doing it. But I was like, I can't. That's not what I want my life to look like. And so I think it's really important to have both of those. Like, you need the full context to make these decisions, like these really sustainable, like really big decisions about your business.
Absolutely. I just it as the more we talk about it, the more I'm starting to realize just how much I rely. I rely on Airtable. And you mentioned the fact that if you changed Thrivecart, your payment processor, all of that data is in there. And most people do not
Mhm.
do their due diligence to have any redundancy and have any offshoring of what's taking place in this platform. And I think, Ashley, if anything, making sure that no one platform is the sole owner of any set of data
Yeah.
is the goal, right?
Yep. Dubsado, my nightmare. Like, you can't even export stuff out of that thing. Um, Yes, that's huge, and so, like, we're moving off of Thrivecart into Active Campaign because of Kronda, but, we have our email marketing metrics in Airtable, so I feel totally fine hopping off that software and knowing that that's not like, it's not we're not gonna lose all that, and I think
Yeah.
we as much as we're like, "Yes, this is I found my finalized tech stack." No, you haven't, like, it's always gonna change, it's always gonna evolve, but for me, what's never gonna change is Airtable as like and so it's all can still go into this hub. And if it does change, it's super easy to export these CSVs out of Airtable. So like if it goes down, like we're able to get that data out and that's really important to me in a software too.
Yeah, I think that's a strong point to end on is that since I've been using Airtable, I have witnessed a rest easiness about me in any software that I'm using. Any software, Ashley, because I make sure it's all stored in Airtable. Now, one would say, well, Chris, what about when Airtable fails? Well, listen, something's going to fail at some point. You can't it can't be 100%.
Yeah.
But the fact that I have data in one place and data in another, just in itself protects my business that much more. Ashley, before you go,
Mhm.
I want to play a couple rounds of I use Airtable for. Okay, so I'll start. I'm gonna say I use Airtable for, and I'll say something, and then you respond with what you use Airtable for, and we'll
Okay.
maybe do 2 or 3 rounds. We won't go crazy unless we truly get carried away. Everyone, this is straight off the cuff. I did not prep for this. I did not prep Ashley for this. This is the first thing that comes to mind. I'll get it started. I use Airtable for my monthly budget for my household.
I use Airtable to track my monthly recurring revenue and my projected payment plans
Mm.
automatically.
Project. I haven't got to that point of projection. I would love to see that.
That will change your life,
Oh my god. I didn't even think of I've always been thinking about what happened and what's happening. I didn't think about what will happen. So,
especially with a group program. Yep.
love it. I use Airtable for my podcast scheduling pipeline.
I use Airtable for my employee handbook.
Mm,
So company values, all of that stuff is in Airtable and then in their interface.
beautiful. I use Airtable as a database to house all of the emails that I've built in Active Campaign.
Mhm. I use Airtable for that. And I use it when I have a launch, I every sale automatically is attributed to the launch automatically. So I can refresh and see exactly where I'm at with my sales goal for my launch, like
Mm,
whenever I want.
yes. I use Airtable to store all the data from Active Campaign because it's much easier to look at and draw correlations in Airtable.
I use Airtable for my personal morning reflections. So I journal inside of it and I put what I'm grateful for, lots of personal things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I ended with this one. Uh, I use Airtable for the one time I had to put my oldest son on a performance improvement plan, and I logged and I logged every day what did or didn't happen. So at the end of this duration, we could sit down and have a substantive conversation about did you hit your metrics or not, so we could take some
Incredible.
according action.
I gotta say, I used Airtable to plan my entire wedding last year. My 3-day summer camp
Mm.
wedding was all in Airtable.
Oh my goodness! Wow. All right. Well, in there, I enjoyed that and learned a lot. By the way, Ashley, people have been listening to you for the last 30 to 35 minutes talk about Airtable and myself. And they heard you mention your program and how you teach people who have group programs how to really centralize and get more out of it. Where can they go to connect with you more or find out more about your program?
Yeah, so Instagram will be the best because, link in bio will take you to all the things. And my Instagram handle is at do the damn thing underscore.
All right. So we'll have that link in the show notes. And Ashley, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. And we did nerd out, but I believe we gave value to the audience that if they were curious, confused, conflicted, or whatever,
Yep.
that hopefully this episode got them that much closer to making the decision to adopt. You would think Airtable sponsoring this. You know, it's just good software, everyone. What can we say? It's really good software. Excuse me, I'm glad to be connected with somebody like yourself, Ashley, that helps these entrepreneurs really navigate that terrain of group coaching programs, and things of that nature. So thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, yes, yes. And we're connected now, Ashley. I'll see you online and ongoing and more with Airtable and who knows? I mean, they keep adding more and more features. By this time next year, Ashley, We in fact, okay, I was about to let you go. I've got to get a commitment so all my viewers listen to this. I think I need you back on the podcast. I think I need you back on the podcast at least one more time. And I believe by then, Airtable would have done something amazing and mind blowing that we'd have been like, oh my God, we thought it was great back then. Look at what they've done now.
Yes.
So Ashley, can I get a commitment to get you back on the podcast, maybe even later this year?
Yeah, I'll come whenever. We got a lot to talk about. We can talk for hours.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. All right. Thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on to the podcast. Greatly appreciate it. See you online. Thank you.